Hi folks, Raspberry Pi always surprises with its new products, and this time it is no different. Today we're gonna talk about a new addition to Raspberry Pi 5, AI-Hat Plus 2. This video is divided in 3 parts. First, we're gonna discuss features and operation. We're gonna compare it to other very powerful single-board computers' inbuilt neural processing units. Then we're gonna discuss the hardware and hat installation to a bare Raspberry Pi. Finally, we're gonna discuss software installation. It's really an amazing piece of hardware. It can achieve about 40 tera operations per second, which is impressive even compared to much more powerful computers with more processing cores and more hardware, like Radxa Orion 06, which is a 6th generation Pi with 12 processing cores and a neural processing unit which can, I'll put this in emphasis, only do 30 tera operations per second. And the whole computer, together with the processing cores and a much more capable graphics processor, can do 45 tera operations per second if all the resources are used simultaneously, which is not easy to do. So you might be better off with Raspberry Pi 5 with an AI hat than with very capable and very expensive computer that might do only 30 tera operations per second due to possible AI software limitations. Even a cheaper Raspberry Pi 5 with 4 GB of RAM with Raspberry Pi AI-Hat Plus 2 will do most of AI processing just as fast as Raspberry Pi 5 with 16 GB of RAM with the same Raspberry Pi AI-Hat, because all the processing is done within the hat, more precisely within the Hailo-10H module and its dedicated RAM. However, with Raspberry Pi AI-Hat Plus 2, 40 tera operations per second currently can only be achieved running large language models, which heavily rely on a dedicated 8 GB of RAM, which are actually only accessed directly through Hailo-10H module. However, this advantage can currently not be utilized when running other AI tasks. If you are running optical object recognition and optical object detection through a digital MIPI camera or a USB camera, you can only achieve about 26 tera operations per second. This is comparable to Hailo-8 module. When I've tested it, it really ran great, at least for object detections. It also did a little bit of object recognition. When I showed it a little koala teddy bear, it decided it was not a person but a teddy bear, but it can detect a number of objects in a picture. And what is also interesting is that it also detects, for example, a keyboard. But why would you buy a much more expensive Raspberry Pi AI-Hat Plus 2 without having an intention to run a large language model where it excels? If you want to run a large language model, you can also do it for free. For example, you can use Google's AI mode from any Chrome or Chromium browser. It works very well and you get even better results than from your locally installed model. However, there are situations where you don't want your information to be shared with the public by any means and in any possible circumstances. For example, if you want to discuss with your language model a new version of your product which has not been released to the public, you would certainly not go to Google's AI mode and ask it about it, because it would have known nothing. But there is no 100% guarantee that current or future models cannot actually learn from your questions. So when somebody else asks for this product that may be anticipated by the public, it may get an interesting answer from the large language model that everybody uses. So if you want to have personalized large language models that only know what you ask them and only work for you and keep your secrets, then you certainly are not going to use a public large language model where you can never be sure about it. However, if you test Raspberry Pi AI-Hat Plus 2 with voice recognition, we're gonna quickly find out that it is too slow for a normal human-to-human like conversation. But you have to wait a considerable amount of time for the module to process your information and to understand what you've asked it. So it actually first converts your voice to letters, to a written text, and then it analyzes what you've actually said, and then it provides an answer, which it could also play with a voice generator. This is very interesting for a number of personalized robotic applications But there is again a catch. So if you're gonna use your Hailo-10H module for optical object recognition and for optical object detection, then you cannot use it at the same time for a large language model. At least not with Ulima server and the standard software for optical object detection and recognition. You have to purge it from all the information and then you have to reload the information. I've tried using both at the same time, but I've only got error 500 with my large language model if optical object detection and recognition were enabled. So I literally had to shut down one program to be able to run another one and even restart another program to make it work properly. The Ulima server is dependent on the module, and if some other application grabs the module, then it cannot work. So the server fails and you have to restart the server to be able to ask questions. Another use of the module is actually when you don't have access to the internet. Then it might be a very interesting, a very knowledgeable library. You can ask various questions, but you have to be very careful, because if you get an answer that is wrong and you have no internet to verify this answer, then you may end up with a wrong conclusion. So this is also what you don't want to do. But actually, otherwise, it's usually great. I've tested it asking historical questions. For example, when Titanic sank, and I got exactly the right answer, and I was happy with it. Then I've asked some mathematical questions, and usually it was a nice answer. It was something useful, but sometimes the answer was completely off. And sometimes if you are testing the model with this kind of questions, you just have to tell the model that it is wrong. And I don't know whether it can learn much of it, but I know that it stores context, some kind of path of thinking. For instance, if you want it to calculate the volume of a cube with the side of 11 centimeters, then the expected volume would be 1331 cubic centimeters. But if the answer is 121 square centimeters, then you know that you've been probably misunderstood for the size of the surface area of a square, or that the model is cheating on you because it doesn't really know how to calculate the result. Large language models also excel at writing program code. So if you want to have a segment of your program, let's say in Python, or if you know nothing about a programming language, you may just say, okay, can you write me a simple program that prints out, for example, a name, and you get a sample program. But if you're going to ask the model to make you a computer game like Tetris, then you would simply get a pointer to a web page or to a GitHub page where you can download the source code. So it's not going to do something for you that is already available from the internet, but it might do something that is relatively simple. But if you are a beginner, you don't know how to do it. You may also ask it, for example, create a table with 10 fields and enable me to fill in the contents as I desire. And you also get the table, and then you get some kind of prompt which will enable you to enter all the values. So these are actually simple programs which may be very useful when you want to combine them to an application, or if you want to learn about a certain programming language. You may also ask theoretically what is different from another programming language that you already know. Raspberry Pi AI Hat Plus 2 is easy enough to install on a Raspberry Pi 5. It connects through PCIe port as well as through the 40-pin expansion port. A port regulator is included, so there is no obstruction for the original Raspberry Pi cooler to be installed on the Raspberry Pi as well. There is also an additional passive cooling rib for the Hailo module and its RAM. So basically what you have to do if you have a bare Raspberry Pi 5 is just connect the cable, which is already connected to the module from one side, and you just have to insert the other side of the Raspberry Pi 5. Maybe it does look a little bit strange why the cable is pre-installed to the hat, but there is a good reason for this, because a usual PCIe cable for Raspberry Pi FFC connector has connectors on the same side on both ends, but this cable has connectors on the opposite sides. This is probably why Raspberry Pi decided to pre-install the cable. If you've already bought your Raspberry Pi AI Hat Plus 2 and covered your Raspberry Pi 5 with it, which is relatively easy, you're now probably wondering how to install the AI software. If you're going to use optical, object detection and object recognition, then simply install the latest version of Trixie and download a number of samples from the GitHub. If you want to run a large language model, then the installation has to be done in few steps. First, you have to satisfy the prerequisites, which include Docker together with appropriate key rings to be able to download appropriate Docker applications. Then you have to install the backend, which is available as an installable application, which you can install through sudo apt install command. Now you're ready to perform an offline large language model installation, but first you have to obtain it. One option is to obtain it from the Hailo website, where you have to register before downloading a model. The installation is relatively easy if you follow the instructions from their webpage. The last step is installing the frontend, which connects to the Hailo or Lima server, which must be constantly running in a separate command window. Thank you for watching. If you've liked this video, please press like and subscribe buttons and don't forget about the notification bell. You may hype this video as well. See you in the next video. Bye.